If I asked you to get a piece of paper and something to write with, and to make a numerical list of all the things that you would be willing to die for, how long is your list?
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for.
The Panther 48.
Willing to die for. How long is your list?
What is the tribal self?
The Panther
The
48.
tribal self is what goes above the immediate acquaintances of the social.
Willing to die for.
The family, the people you know, live next door.
You would be willing to die for.
Tribal
The
self.
Panther 48.
I'm talking about those movies, those yet unborn.
Peace and power. Once again, this is your Panther 48. This is your big brother Sight calling out of Texas. I'm sitting here with my other two brothers of the Panther 48. The Black Joker, Brother E, calling out of Florida, our Minister of Information Emeritus. Peace and power, Brother E.
Greetings, bro. What's good?
What's good? And we have the esteemed chairman, Brother Ward, calling out of San Diego, California. Former chairman of the original New Black Panther Party that was headquartered out of Dallas, Texas. He's currently the chairman of the San Diego chapter of the Black Panther Party, and he's also the national chief of staff of the People's Black Panther Party, headquartered by Changa and Nkrumah. He's also our chairman emeritus, Brother E, our chairman emeritus of the Panther 48. Peace and power, Brother War.
Like power, all power to the people.
Today we're going to continue our discussion. We promised you that we was going to give you a class on. We were basically giving you the Panther 48's war map. And what we mean by that, we're giving you a Panther Smart Book for those who are already members of chapters and have chapters and want to be more organized, for those who want to build and start chapters, or even for the people of the community that want to be able to hold their local chapter accountable for their responsibility to the people. We are giving you a war map, the structure in which we should be found in a chapter under, how it should be guided and led, and the responsibilities that chapter should have in the community. Last week, we started with what was called the Commission of the Liberation, the very thing that gives a chairman his marching orders to start a chapter in the community and how to build that chapter and make that chapter responsible to the community. Today, we're going to go and build the extensions of the chairman's Commission of Liberation, which is the Central Committee, the staff. And today we're going to let Brother War lead that conversation while myself and Brother E build on it and add on to that discussion and those ideas. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Brother War, and we're going to construct a functional Panther Central Committee. It's on you, Brother War.
All right, first thing we have to recognize is even building off of what we discussed in our last segment with the commission, with the chairperson. The deal is this person has to be someone that has the overall vision in the direction of where the party has to go. One of the biggest things we face in terms of a challenge with that is whatever locale you're in, that vision needs to be accommodate where you are and what you have to work with. Oftentimes that vision is going to have to be something that's real flexible, because based on what you're able to bring in with the Central Committee, and as the Central Committee grow and develop, you have to keep things at pace with your membership and be realistic in terms of your approach. Oftentimes we like to jump right in and have grandiose ideas, but we have to be careful about that, simply because you can only do what you can do. And from that standpoint, you want to give everybody something that is achievable. But as you reach each benchmark, you want to definitely make sure that you're able to constantly extend that benchmark. You always have to go plan to reach beyond where you currently are, and keep the people moving forward, and not letting folks get too comfortable in where they are, to the point to where we realize that it has to be a dedicated struggle. So the chairperson has to be able to really approach vision with the mentality of keeping people motivated, keeping people in a position of loving to grow, challenge themselves, and build. From that, you have your chief of staff. And the chief of staff is primarily going to be the one that is able to orchestrate and develop and keep track of how all of the Central Committee positions are operating. And from that, I don't know if Psych want to kind of jump in a little bit on the chief of staff.
Well, as the chief of staff, when you look at and understand the position of the chief of staff, the chief of staff's job is to lead and guide the central committee. And we talked and expressed earlier in the last video, and if you haven't watched it, you need to go check out that COL Commission of Liberation video. The chairman is given the Commission of Liberation. He's given the responsibility to build a chapter. The chairman cannot do everything that the chairperson cannot do everything that's needed for the community. So to do the things that to take on those responsibilities and to fulfill those obligations, the chairman has to build and structure a staff in order to do that. So the chief of staff becomes the head staff officer of that staff, hence the name chief of staff. And the direct, I guess you could say, I don't want to say line of ascendancy because I don't want to use that because it doesn't actually work like that. But the backfill of the chairman. So if something happens to the chairman, the chief of staff steps in and takes that position until the chapter gets in a position to vote on who they want their chairman to be. But the chief of staff has to lead, guide, and train the central committee in order to do their duties.
And from that, and not necessarily in any specific order, but next thing we have is the Minister of Law and Justice. And one thing about the Minister of Law and Justice is we're dealing with the internal operations as well as the political apparatus of how the organization is going to structure itself. And that person obviously is going to work closely with the Chief of Staff and the Minister of Defense as a central committee to make sure that we implement our policies properly, the discipline is held properly, accountability is held properly, as well as be astute on law of the land and how that is going to be developed. The Minister of Justice also works to help build a legal aid cadre for the organization. Then we have our Minister of Politics.
Hold on before you take off, War. I got a couple of questions. So the Black Panther Party Minister of Justice and Law, kind of get into a little bit detailed explanation of this person. You know, like if you're talking to somebody coming in and let's say they believe that they are the person to do this job, and they're asking you, what are you expecting of me? What are my responsibilities? How do I carry out this obligation? Let's say this person is an ex-lawyer. This person, maybe the person was an ex-lawyer, because I see that we say that the person must have some law experience. You have brothers that's in prison, they call them writ writers, and all they do, majority of their day, is sit in the law library and study law. So let's say one of these brothers was to come out, brothers or sisters was to come home and decide that this is the function that they wanted to exercise their struggle under. Can you give them an understanding of what it is they would be expected to do and how they would be able to hold this post?
First, like I said, the main thing is you have two different aspects of that: the internal aspect and the external. Yes. The internal aspects of law and justice has to do with operating within the bounds of how we move and how our membership need to be held accountable for the work that it does within the community. And
so you're saying the party's own rules, laws, and obligations.
Correct. Okay. Party's own rules, laws, and obligations, and with that, in upholding the structure. And so, unlike someone that is just like a corporate attorney, the deal is we're coming from more of a disciplined approach that has to do with even going into motivating the membership as a chairperson and the chief of staff. The Minister of Law and Justice wants to see to it that people recognize the importance of Panther rule, Panther law, and Panther etiquettes, which is often not talked about. But the etiquettes of a Panther goes into realizing that whether you in or out of that beret, there's a certain standard of upholdings that you have to operate under, which also flows into some of the aspects of what the Minister of Defense take on in the field marshal. But as a Minister of Law and Justice, the deal is if any membership need to come under some type of hearing situation, then or some type of disciplinary situation, you're the one that's going to help build that panel that's going to go over that and determine how the proceeding is going to take place, gather the evidence, and that is where you start getting into some of the same elements of standard law, that a legal law that we're familiar with, that comes into place. But the deal is we approach things from a community-based standpoint. So it is one of the things on our platform, we talk about being judged by a jury of our peers. So we take very seriously the idea of dealing with things from a position that allows the membership to take part in recognizing what is happening, and it is revolving around the actual specifics and how it affects the community and how it affects the organization, more so than it being just a stringent aspect of law, to where, okay, well, if you broke this law, this is the punishment. Everything leads up to how it goes about, who is affected, why you did what you did, what are the consequences of those actions. So it is more of definitely a more fair trial scenario, and one that has more involvement of the membership itself. So the Minister of Law and Justice has to be able to put that down, and has to be able to separate how things are done in through the American politics, as opposed to something being done through a council of elders, so to speak, and a council of our African people. So we operate a little bit different with that in mind, because it's about the people. It's about how we come together and build and use things. So we don't get caught up in all of the legal jargon that goes into the court play, and just the circus that happens in that environment. But at the same time, the Minister of Law and Justice is somebody that has to be able to navigate those elements as it applies to dealing with people in the community that are needing legal counsel, and how to address that. Our Minister of Law and Justice is not specifically somebody that is going to represent people in the community that have legal issues, but it is more or less someone that knows how to navigate and assist with legal counsel, as well as, help find the right people within the community that can aid the organization, and that can aid folks that have legal issues.
So ideally, and it's just something that I'm spitballing, coming off the top of my head based on what you just explained. Ideally, the Panther Party's office should have a center or a section in it where people can even come and build with the Minister of Justice and Law if they're dealing with something legal. While he or she may not be qualified to necessarily give legal advice, they can have a discussion on and come up with ideas of how they can go about dealing with whatever case or charge they're dealing with, or even something in the community. Like one of the major things that the Black Panther Party out of Oakland was founded for, self-defense of dealing with the police officers.
Right. Yeah. Right. And another thing is to help the community know how to, gather evidence, build a case, and get the proper support.
Yeah, true indeed. One of the major things, and then I'm gonna get off this for a minute, but one of the major things that I saw, that I'm seeing in modern day times that's lacking, is in the 60s, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, like as E like to call them, Huey and the boys, they had a legal first aid, a little document, a card that they passed out. And I'm seeing a lot of brothers getting themselves, either when we see these police brutality cases where brothers end up getting shot or killed or abused or any of this, it's usually because they're not following the legal first aid a lot of time, even though they're in the right. It's like one of the things that we always told back in the day in Dallas, we used to tell brothers to not resist, to just take the charge, and we'll deal with it on the back end. Yeah. You see a lot of brothers arguing and fussing for their rights, not understanding that you're not dealing with a people that you can rationalize with. You're not dealing with a people when these police hit the streets. And I'm not saying all police are bad. It's like anything else in any society. You probably have those officers who are dedicated to their job and believe in the concept of justice. But for the most part, you're going to have those megomaniacal authority figures who get to put on their uniform and abuse that authority. And a lot of times When people put on a uniform and get to have power of a community, they usually don't utilize that power to the correctly. So a lot of times our brothers and sisters are responding incorrectly. So I think that legal first aid is something that our people need to understand. All that arguing, all that fussing, all that. I see videos all the time, brothers. I want to talk to your commander. I want to talk to your supervisor. Not understanding that you just said something that made all the sense. Why you used to tell brothers this in prison. You're going to appeal to the enemy. You said, give me your captain, give me your sergeant. You're appealing to the enemy to bring their supervisor, their higher rank to you, thinking that they're gonna intercede on your behalf. In your sentence, when you asked for their higher rank, you just told yourself that wasn't going to happen by saying, give me your sergeant. I want to speak to your captain. When you said that, their captain is going to come to protect them and defend their side. So you shouldn't be shocked when you get that captain and that captain turns around and give you more of the brutality that the regular officer was given, because he's not coming there for you. He's coming there for them. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times our people don't get that, don't understand that. I used to see that a lot in prison, and I used to ask, brother, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? It's like a blood being violated or disrespected by a Crip and asking for, give me your Crip OG. He's gonna come, but he's gonna come to defend his own soldier. He's not coming to defend you. He's not coming to side with you. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, one thing to add to that in terms of a field operation, to where I do see that being a relevant thing, is that when you may have a rogue cop who, for whatever reason, is trying to manhandle you, and you want to have more eyes on
Yes.
Not to say that anybody's going to be more just, but the deal is oftentimes when you can do that now with body cam, you're gonna make sure that you got all different angles covered, and different officers showing the same thing. And now when other officers show up and they have their body cam on, all of a sudden sometimes that initial officer has to change their tune in terms of how they was going to deal with you, especially if it's something that's going to try to hype you up to do something so that they can shoot you. So we have requested backup from those positions, because you got somebody that don't want to turn their body cam on or trying to come at you from a certain way, and so you want to have more there. Not to say that you're not going to go to jail if that's the case, but the point is you want as much coverage as possible when you know you in the right.
True indeed. So just ask this, in your suggestion, in a situation like that, whether it's the average citizen in the community or a fully decorated Panther in the field, when approached by a rogue officer and you in the right, the officer's in the wrong, what's the best way to respond to that? Should you just go out blazing, or should you take the arrest and deal with it on the back end?
You should always deal with it on the back end. It's better to be dealing with a judge than to be in the ground. And so we have to be careful, but keep in mind, the idea a lot of times is what they're doing is they're trying to push buttons. They're trying to get you to be the wild, crazy fool that they want you to be, in order to be able to justify whatever action that they do. So it's always about escalation from that standpoint. So you have to know how to de-escalate. You have to know how to be calm and just deal with it. We can't let our ego get the best of us in the field. And that's one of the biggest things is just how even when we approach any situation, simply being righteous is not good enough to think you're going to win the battle. So we got to get that out of our mind, thinking just because we right or that quote unquote they evil or they pigs, or that this is what the government is doing, that righteousness is going to prevail simply because of that. We have to realize that all of this is a game to them. And we operating behind enemy lines, so we have to know how to navigate accordingly. And your emotionalism is nowhere fit to be on the battlefield. Everything needs to be strategic and logic in terms of your operation. Very tactical in that situation, but it all has to come together.
True indeed. Brother E, you want to chime in on that?
Yeah. For me, it's funny how words just really don't mean anything We don't pay attention to, we don't listen, we don't accept what they're telling us in our face. We think Miranda rights mean something. But if you listen to the Miranda rights, it tells you everything you need to know about them in the first sentence. You know, you have the right to remain silent. Everything you say can and will be used against you. That means whatever you do, whatever you say, their job is to figure out a way to make it put you where they want you. They're letting you know that off the jump, this is not about justice. This is about them finding somebody to put some shit on. But we keep trying to make them live up to their word. We keep trying to, you know, equate somehow that they're going to all of a sudden keep their words to us, not realizing that even if they did, there's nothing even in their legal system that says that they have to keep their word to us. We keep trying to identify as them, think that we're them, think that we're part of the family somehow. We're still appealing to them. Even when we watch these white boys do it, we think that we can do what the white boys do, not realizing that there, in my head, there are no good cops, because this is a game of groups, and cops as a group are not good for us. Might be some, you know, decent-minded folk, but it don't matter because they're cops. They've chosen their side, and so we stand in juxtaposition, you know, stand toe-to-toe as groups, not as these individuals. But we refuse to accept any of that. And so the pieces we keep trying to put together don't fit, don't make sense, you know, until we accept our Miranda rights. Anything you say, anything, their job is to put you in jail, to make money off of you for the state, to get you tied up in the game. Putting you down, it's not good economics to put one of your bucks down. So that's not their first, you know, go-to. They would rather lock you up and get, you know, 50 years of work for free. But we keep thinking that all of a sudden they're gonna have an epiphany and it's gonna be some good white boys. Remember, one of the cats, one of the cops, one of the brothers that got murdered by a cop, that same cop pulled Dave Chappelle. He talks about it in one of his stand-ups. That same cop pulled him over the night before and was all, you know, nice guy and whatnot. Next day he's murdering us. So whether or not there are good ones in there, for me, it's a moot point. It's irrelevant, because at 2 a.m. when you get pulled over, coming home late from church or whatever, doing the right thing, not out doing any dirt, minding your business, you get pulled over by a cop who's brown, white, yellow, whatever the color. Does it really matter if there are a few good ones? Because which one are you getting tonight? Which one are you getting when you get pulled over? You don't know. Nobody knows until after the fact. And that's the game we keep trying to push back and act like we're them. But obviously we're not.
All right, we're gonna move to the next one. I want to say this, and so Panthers listening, I think it's extremely important for us to get in front of that, and you get in front of that by developing a legal first aid pamphlet that we pass out to the community and actually teach the people how they're supposed to respond in situations like that. I mean, I think that we had good training back in the day in the Dallas chapter in the 90s. I remember when E got arrested in Forest Hill out in Tarrant County, had an SKS in his little Huey P. Newton bug, black beetle bug. But instead of fighting and arguing and fussing with the people, he took the arrest. The Panther chapter, Dallas chapter, came out to Forest Hill, stood in front of the Forest Hill Police Department. Not only did the charges get dropped, but we also got Brother E's gun back. Now imagine how they would have went if Brother E would have been rah-rah, because he was in the right. Brother E had done nothing wrong. But instead he dealt with it on the back end, instead of trying to compel the enemy to respect his rights as a human being, which is insane if you truly believe what all of our greats and elders have been teaching us throughout the last 100 and so years about this enemy we're dealing with. But anyway, go ahead, War.
All right, so the next one here is Minister of Politics. And what's important about this is even going back to what we talked about with the Minister of Justice and Law, is the Minister of Politics is going to be dealing with the architecture or the design of the Panther codes and developing our law and how we operate within that law. One of the things to recognize about that is going into our platform. When we say we are gaining freedom, we're promoting the power of practicing self-determination. Our politics are developed around self-governance. Our politics are developed around the ideology of what we want to do within the community and what we're bringing to raise the consciousness of our people. So when we talk about a minister of politics, this is somebody that's going to be able to break down how we should be governing ourselves as a people and how that operates in terms of dealing with your everyday life, and being able to dissect propaganda, being able to dissect the game of politics and how that operates within our life sector. So a minister of politics is able to help bring a higher level of awareness to the community in regards to how politics are, and use our ability to recognize what it means to be self-governed and what it means to deal with accountability, sovereignty, and all these other aspects of people uniting and coming together. And so that's what a minister of politics is going to get into.
So for the people, because our people, our people have a fairly weak definition of politics. So when they hear minister of politics, maybe they're thinking that this is going to be somebody that gives them the information they need to tell them whether or not they should vote for Trump or whoever's sitting in the Democratic Party position. For the people that may misunderstand that, I mean, is that what minister of politics is? Is he telling you who you should go vote for the president? Is he teaching you how to understand local politics? I mean, the people don't understand what politics is. And to get into a deeper breakdown of that, we have about 5 or 6 videos, because we did a series called The Functional Definition of Politics, where we dug into that. And I suggest anybody that want to understand politics on a higher level, especially from a revolutionary point of view, to look at those videos. But Walt, can you give us a deeper explanation of what politics is, what you're saying politics is, so that we can understand what the responsibility of the M.O.P is to the party and to the community?
Well, the M.O.P, again, we're not looking at it from the stance of any particular governmental entity. We're addressing things as it applies to the platform and the governance of the individual, the family, and the community. So we break down everything as it applies to governance, whether that be on whichever level you're operating from. And we have to do that because our people have to recognize what it means to be self-determined. So when we talk about politics, we talk about, hey, what is it that we have lost as a people? What is it that is holding us back as a people? What does it mean when a group of people come together and decide that they want to make change, decide that they want to create a structure, how they want to operate? Because we have been basically dumbed down as a population. When we think of politics, again, just like you said, we think of voting. We think of, okay, who's the lesser of the two evils, because that's literally how we operate. We already feel like the persons in office are not going to be for our best interest, and so from that standpoint, we just trying to find the best slow poison. But if we as a community want to rise above that, we have to take it back to our recognition of what it means to be in charge and to govern ourselves. What does that mean? What does it look like to be responsible and accountable, and for a community to be operating in a unified structure to where it is in control of its resources? It is able to galvanize and pull together resources. So the minister of politics is going to primarily focus on things as it applies to regaining and getting us to recognize self-sustainability and self-sufficiency and empowerment from that standpoint.
All right. And you don't have nothing the back door on with that?
I don't know if you want to say that over or not, but
I said you don't want. Okay. All right. Let's go to Black Panther Party Minister of Defense. Y'all do see my screen, right?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. All right.
Well, the Minister of Defense, primary security and military officer of the BPP, and deals with our defense and our mobility in terms of security, in terms of making sure that everything is on the up in regards to our ability to face the community. Another thing that's real different in our structure that people are not familiar with is like when we get into field operations, it is the Minister of Defense that is in charge and command at that point. So we break this down into two aspects of operation, where when we talk about strategic, we talk about the vision of the organization, which goes into the chairperson and how they articulate and say that this is what we are supposed to do and how we're going to carry it out. And the Minister of Defense is the one in the field that is dealing with the tactical component of that and determining how logistically that actually looks as far as the mission goes. So chairperson is usually referred to as being the strategic operation, and the Minister of Defense is the tactical operation or the tactical component of how to carry those things out in terms of the policy, procedures, politics, in the way we implement empowerment in the community.
Okay, a couple of questions, and I want to go into history a little bit. When you look at Huey and the boys, Huey P. Newton was the Minister of Defense, and Bobby Seale was actually the chairman. But they always looked at Huey P. Newton as the top leader when it was actually the chairman who was supposed to be the leader of the chapter. Can y'all, any one of y'all, give an explanation of what that is, why that happened? Give a quick breakdown, because some will look at that and say, okay, the Minister of Defense is the leader of the chapter. The Minister of Defense is the one who has the highest rank in the chapter. If we're going off what Hugh and Bobby did, can anybody give a breakdown and build on that? What happened and how they look? And is that structure correct or incorrect?
Okay, I start off real quick. What we have to realize is that the whole situation with Free Huey, that movement basically propelled Huey to be an icon. When Huey became an icon, he became larger than life. That larger than life status elevated the individual above the position. And unfortunately that ended up creating more problems than it should have for the structure. Because of that, Huey ended up with more power and more authority than what he actually should have in terms of what the structure should look like. So that is not necessarily at all how it should be. It's not about the individual, about the person. It's about the structure. But then that goes into Minister of Politics and Minister of Justice in terms of making sure things stay calibrated and in operation. Now, mind you, at the same time, the whole idea of making sure that we keep people egos in check in terms of who they are is why the chairperson would not be in charge in the field, and is why, like in the teaching environment, the Minister of Information or the Minister of Education controls the floor and controls the say so, or the Minister of Culture in terms of certain aspects of the ideology and how we envision implementing that. So at different points and different times, different people are actually in charge. This is one of the things we did actually learn from the development in the attacks on the counterintelligence operations that took place, is that we need to make sure we fortify how we do our operations so that an individual does not get promoted above how they're supposed to operate.
Okay. All right. So let's dig into this Minister of Defense. So it says he's you gave an explanation. I just want to dig into it a little bit, make sure the listening audience understand it. So the Minister of Defense is the primary security and military officer of the Black Panther Party, responsible for the defense preparedness of our party and security of the leadership, the top military advisor and tactical operations officer to the chairman. So the Minister of Defense is essentially the head of our security and our military wing of the party.
Correct.
All right. E, you got anything before we move on? All right. So next we're going to Minister of Health.
So what's powerful about the Minister of Health, and this is one of the things that we really have to look at within our community. Typically when people think Minister of Health or just health in general, What they're not recognizing is what we're doing is we're talking about this as it applies to what we go into when we say our trifactor, which is the physical element, the mental element, the psychological element of our people. Because too often what's happening is we're operating from a broken place in terms of just how we perceive things. So that's when we dive into the difference between perception and perspective. And a minister of health is a person that upholds recognizing that there's a lot of repair that must happen. Our diets are broken, period. And when we say diet, we're talking about your physical, your mental, and your spiritual diet. So a minister of health is somebody that is able to administer and deal with the development of rebuilding our proper diet. Because if I'm not eating right, I'm not thinking right, and I'm not operating right, I'm going to be a sick person. I'm going to bring dysfunctionality to the group, which we mean when we say that the Panther formation in general, as well as how I operate in the community. If I have a sick mind, if I have a sick body, and I have a sick spiritual reference point, then I'm not going to really be able to deal with what it means to be self-determined, what it means to practice the self-determination. So our minister of health is somebody that gets into all engages all elements of those components. So we have to just realize that all the way around as a people, we're operating through certain forms of sickness simply because we're stuck in survival mode. And the minister of health is someone that's going to break that down.
All right. Black Panther Party Minister of Finance and Resources.
Resources is great because you have to have someone that deals with that. Too often, what we want to do is simply associate it with finances, with money. But our biggest deal in the community is resources. Our biggest deal that's coming together as a people is resources. So we refer to everything as knowing how to navigate and operate with our resources. One of the things, even going back to something we talked briefly on with the Minister of Politics, is when y'all talk about the Miranda rights, the deal is you say anything that you say can and will be used against you. When we talk about resources, we have to realize, and it's the acronym that we use in the community called TORS, Tools of Your Surroundings. We teach the people that whatever we're not using for our benefit will be used by the enemy for our demise. And so as a people, we have to recognize what a resource is. And so the Minister of Finance and Resource is the person that upholds our ability to come together as a people and learn what it means to deal with production as opposed to consumption. And even diving into just kind of countering back on the Minister of Health, we have to see that our people are stuck in this mode through domestication that we just want to consume, and don't recognize that if we're going to be empowered, we have to be in modes of production. And it goes into just the whole element of how when you come into a Panther organization, it's all about leadership. We want to teach everybody that they have to be able to lead, whether it be yourself, your family, or again, diving into development and leading in the community. We have to identify our resources. We have to identify our skill sets. We have to identify our strengths and how to magnify those. And so the Minister of Finance and Resources not only just simply deals with the basic elements of keeping the party budget together, but deal with the overall element of what empowerment means and how that looks and how do you get people to come together and utilize and recognize what resources are so that we can do for self. Remember, one of the biggest attacks on the Black Panther Party, what made it one of the greatest internal threats to the United States security, was that when we were politicizing and teaching the community, we was teaching the people that, hey, we got everything that we need in order to empower ourselves. So a lot of the community programs, the majority of the community programs came about by way of the Panthers helping to orchestrate the community members to do what they need to do to develop their own sustainability. And the government saw this as a threat because at that point, you're teaching people to be accountable for themselves, for their own development and growth. And they wanted to make us codependent on the system. Keep in mind that a lot of times that aid is actually weaponized against the people. And we're seeing this happen now with this current administration in terms of how they're doing things in Africa. So when I know that you are dependent upon me for your own resources because you don't know how to deal with, like we say, toys, tools, or your surroundings, you don't know how to deal with it, and you've been stripped of your ability to recognize how to be self-sustaining, then I come in and I make you lazy and I make you dependent upon me by turning around and utilizing these same things against you by putting a dollar amount to it or stripping you of your ability to recognize what they are, and then turn around and sell them to you and feed them to you and get you in a mode of being dependent upon my aid. See, what you want to do when you strip a people from their empowerment, their ability to be self-sustaining, is that you create a system to where there is a welfare to where the people now all of a sudden think that they have to have you in order to survive. They have to have you in order to live. So our Minister of Finance and Resource gets the people back into the right perspective of consciousness about what it means to be operating with our own, under our own guise and control of our operations, and as a community and as a people. We got a lot of repair that needs to happen, and too often our people don't see that this is what it's all about, being self-determined. And it's a lot that goes with that, because you are responsible for your well-being, for the well-being of the community. And when we talk about resources, that's a big component, a big element that's hard to grapple with in the community, because we have a renter's mentality as a population.
So I want to ask a question. So essentially, this post is essentially the Minister of Economics, truly, when you say finance and resources, because originally they built this as a Minister of Finance, but in truth from the perspective you coming from, it's a Minister of Economics, when you understand what the word economics mean. And we have a video on that, functional definition of economics, that you should watch to build on this. We've done videos essentially that branch off of the different responsibilities of the members of this staff or the central committee, that can give you an explanation and understanding of what they should know, what they should understand, and what they should be teaching the people. I have a quick question before we move on, and this for both of y'all. So I need you to pay attention, but because I want to ask this question from two different perspectives. I want to know the revolutionaries' answer to this, and I want to know the Africans' answer to this. And when I say the Africans, I'm saying the preppers or the homesteaders, but I'm not using those terms. I'm using African because, as he said, that we didn't call it prepping and homestead. We just called it being who we were and practicing these ways of life, and just us back becoming who we were. But you talked about the current administration. And if we look at the current administration, we have one of our good brothers, loyal soldier, former field marshal of the Dallas chapter, Brother Darkside, on, and he said that if President Trump got in office, he would be bringing about World War III. And we've been seeing the things that's been happening, and especially economically, the tariffs, the trade, basically, essentially the tariff wars with Canada, things of that nature. I want to know, from a revolutionary standpoint, from a Panther chairman standpoint, what do you think the foreseeable future looks like with the moves that Trump is making? Do you have an opinion on that?
Man, I mean, that really goes into a whole episode we should have to do, or more we should have to do on itself, and to give it real justice. But basically, just in a quick nutshell, the deal is I think it just shows us how dependent we are on the system, and how we need to pull back, and we have no choice but to learn how to self-govern, learn how to take care of our and pool our resources together. Because the way things are going in regards to, like what you say with the tariffs and so forth, is that the United States is aligning itself to be isolated in the community because of the power moves that it's making. And like with anything, when we talk about imperialism from that standpoint, it's reaching a certain apex to where it's going to end up collapsing on itself. It's only so much you can do in terms of poking the bear across the whole world before too long it comes back and bites you and destroys you for what you are. And I think we're starting to see some of the beginning stages of that. All empires rise and they fall. That's one of the bottom lines that people have to recognize. And the United States is not going to be any different in that capacity. But what does that mean to the Black people? What does that mean to us? Because we're dealing with levels of oppression and bondage as a people. And so either we have to rise to the occasion and recognize that self-determination and self-sufficiency is gonna have to be something that we take control of, or we just continue to allow ourselves to operate, from the position of victimization. We can't keep doing that. Again, just because somebody is wrong ain't gonna make you right, ain't gonna make you triumph in the quote unquote end. You have to have active work that's going to get you from point A to point B. Our enslavement will come about simply because if we are not actively putting ourselves in a position of empowerment, then you're going to get taken advantage of. That's what imperialism and capitalism is all about. At most, exploitation as possible, and you will be exploited if you don't stop yourself from being exploited. And that's something that we tend to think that morality is something that's just going to set in, and somebody's going to realize that, you know what, enough is enough. I shouldn't be operating like this. That's not what's going on. That's not the reality of how the world is operating. We have to expand our view.
Brother E, a Minister of Information African's perspective on that question. How is Trump's tariff war with Canada, the things that he's been doing lately, how is that affecting us as a people?
That's a lot to say. That's a heavy ass question, bro.
I know it.
I mean, it just seems that it's the next catalyst. The things are laying out the way they are is just, whether it's Democrat, Republican, whatever. The only thing that changes is the veneer, is the look of it. Ultimately, all of them want control, and one of the ways you take absolute authority is to just break down a society completely. At some point it all snaps. And I think, like I said, whether it's the veneer of one party or another party, the corporatists or the oligarchs and whatnot, it's all moving in the same direction. And I don't like predictions. I don't ever feel comfortable even trying to think that, but just watching and looking at, past results. What was it? What was the name of the case? Hoot Smalley. There was a time around the Great Depression when they tried the whole tariff thing. I'm gonna have to look it up. The actual name's a real weird name, but they tried the tariffs thing, and it ended up making the Depression even worse. It ended up making economic times even worse. So whether it's hot war, or whether with Russia, or it's the realignment of these plates, these tectonic political plates, moving from the U.S. moving from being aligned with Germany and France and the whole Western shit, and starting to cozy up a little bit more to the other direction. However it plays out, it plays out. For us, things are going to get worse. They just are. And that's why, for me, I've gone the way I've gone, is because everything wants to move in this. I started to see things analog and digital, and it's moving more and more digital. And the root of it, the digital, is going to explode. That's what we're looking at, the politics and the government and the world and all of that. The analog is us raising our own food so that we're not dependent on that digital, because that digital is controlled by somebody else, as opposed to our realities, which have always been our direct relationship with the world around us. And that's what has always undergirded our cultures. And without that there, because they've eroded us to the point where we, again, believe we are individuals, believe that we are at odds with one another, and have lost complete touch with that idea of cooperation as opposed to constant competition as a way of life. And so we get caught up in thinking that a one-day boycott could have any long-lasting results. You got a one-day boycott, whatever you get out of it is going to be very, very temporary, because that's how deep the roots are. They're just that deep. So we get caught up in thinking that, again, identifying with the bullshit that they keep feeding us. This is what opposition, this is what protest looks like, da 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 da. That's not our fight. Our fight is to regain our identity with one another. And having not done that, or on a wide scale, yeah, it's going to be problematic. We're not prepared for that shit at all. So, I mean, I don't know if that answers the question or not, but yeah, I figure shit's going to get worse. So I guess, and again, that's even cultural context, because really that's not getting worse. That's moving us closer to where we need to be. If that's the trigger that makes it happen, if that's the shit hitting the fan, then that's what it is. But there's no two ways about it. If you stay tied into a system and that system collapses, if the matrix goes down, you go down with it. So we haven't, planted ourselves outside of the system so that everything we do to resist ends up being an appeal, like we were talking about a while ago with the cops in the streets. We end up appealing to the very system that we're trying to get away from. We end up right back asking them to let us this, to let us have that. In whatever shape, form, or fashion, that's what it is, without a cultural context. That's why the party didn't know that we were free. And that snapshot of time that they had, didn't realize that we were free, because we were still waiting for something. I don't know who we were waiting on. But if self-determination is the goal, which I do believe that, us being self-determined is what it is we're stressing after, why didn't we realize that we were free in those moments, that we were self-determined? We took care of each other. That was it. That was self-determination, but we had no idea. So now we're here in this mess, still trying to figure that out. So, yeah, like I said, I don't know if that answers the question, but there you go.
Definitely, that definitely answered the question. War, Minister of Operational Logistics.
Basically, this is the person that upholds the various components of all of the different operations that we have going. There's a lot of moving parts in terms of keeping a chapter functional. And so logistics plays the utmost role of putting up the matrix together of how to keep everything in flow in operations. Because most of us find ourselves in a situation where this is new. Leadership is new. Operating in any level of a self-governance capacity as a chapter is basically like having a mini government. And so there's a lot of logistics and moving parts that's involved. And so the Minister of Logistics is the person that's just going to help get everybody to know their component and their place and how to fit in and move any particular thing. Whether that be our specific programs, internal committees that we develop, or people that we use in the community to help engage Panther work and Panther empowerment for the community.
All right. That's self-explanatory. I'm gonna keep moving. Black Panther Party Community Liaison Officer.
A liaison officer, what's real important about this is our basically what we refer to as our linchpin to the community and into the streets. Community liaison officer is going to be the one that helps us to coordinate with other organizations, build that camaraderie we have there, as well as also someone that can help us to work with the street tribes, help us to embrace and build with the community as a whole. So the community liaison office is really just a conduit for Panthers to link in and be on point with what we need to do in the community, how we engage the community, and how we get the community to embrace the element of ideology and culture that needs to be facilitated so that the consciousness of the people can be raised.
When I hear that, I think of historically, I think of Fred Hampton and his model as being the perfect community liaison officer. Okay, here is this guy. I don't even know if this even belongs on the Central Committee, the Black Panther Party Minister of Information. Is that even important? You know, I had to joke with E. Minister of Information, Black Panther Party Minister of Information.
I like E to talk on that one. Let our Minister of Information speak on Minister of Information.
Did I go too far?
I don't feel qualified. I mean,
page 173.
Yeah, I went too far. All right, here you go. There you go. Black Panther Party Minister of Information. He qualified here. What do you mean he ain't qualified? I'm going to read it and then E build on it. Responsible for articulating the political and revolutionary positions of the Black Panther Party throughout the city, must be well versed in original Panther history, first, second, third, and fourth development, general world history, politics of governance, as well as current events, shall be responsible for gathering such research pertinent to the liberation struggle and transmitting such research to all the Black Panther Party members. Shall coordinate with the Central Committee to ensure the Black Panther Party effective in our mission, responsible for making major political and revolutionary advances for the people, for the Black Panther Party, will oversee the operations and information distribution of the field scholars.
Damn, that's what that is. I mean, I don't feel qualified because it's an ongoing process of understanding exactly what it is, what you're supposed to be doing, what you're supposed to be giving, all of that being shaped and reshaped. Do you remember what was my response when you said, because we got drafted by your man back in the day, and then appointed, not asked, pretty much told, this is what you're gonna do, by Brother War here. So do you remember that conversation? Do you remember that back and forth War?
Vaguely, yeah. I do, but at the same time, what you got to look at is all I did was really kind of like going back to what we say commission, is I saw what you already was, and I'm basically saying that I'm telling you, you're gonna use this to help build the community through the Panther framework. So it's like, this is what this person already is. So we need somebody of this caliber to come in and move us in the right direction in terms of making sure we understand what it means to how to process information and articulate what our point should be. So it's really like taking on the guidance of where we need to go. So Minister of Information holds a lot of power within our framework and our structure.
And when I see the Minister of Information myself, to compare it to something, and this is not a perfect comparison, but it is I think it's a good one. I think of like the head of the CIA, or the head of an informational part of the government, because the Minister of Information not only educates and develops the political education class of the party, at least he did at that time, but the Minister of Information's job is also to get information from what's going on in the society and feed it back to the organization through the chairman, constantly keep us abreast of what's going on in the world and the society around us, so we could be in a better position to make strategic decisions of how the chapter is moving and how the chapter is being organized. Also, on a deeper level, I see the Minister of Information as somebody who also learns how to develop those counter revolutionary ideas and concepts to deal with strategies and techniques that may be utilized against the party, kind of like a to use a mafia reference, kind of like a consigliere to a certain degree. That person would need to have that information in order to feed back to the chairman.
Yeah, let me break down another thing that I like to talk about in regards to the importance of the Minister of Information is to the community. Because again, we talk about raising the consciousness of our people. let's just go back to the operation that most people are familiar with in terms of the attack on the party and community organizers, which we call the counterintelligence program. So the deal is what that it says what it is. It's countering the intelligence of the people, countering the intelligence of the organizations and of the street groups and organizers that are moving to raise our people to a level of self-determination and self-sufficiency. The Minister of Information is able to go into the community through our political education classes and break down our actual position of dysfunctionality. These are the reasons why we can't come together as a community. And what they do, the Minister of Information, what the Minister of Information is able to do is articulate that as it applies to the internal operations of what it means to be a operating or a practicing self-governance organization, which is what the Black Panther Party is, and break that down on a level to where the average person within the community can start implementing and practicing self-sufficiency and self-determination on any level, any capacity. But you first have to know where you are. You first have to know what you suffer from. Too often we don't know that we don't know, or we think we are better off than what we are, simply because we're exchanging the concept of all of the distractions and all the levels of comfort that we got for freedom. We tend to think that this makes us free. We tend to think that this makes us well off, and don't realize that that's basically just no different than a pig being in a pig pen and just being fed slop to the point to where it's always eating and always consuming and always has access to something. But that access to something, what is that doing in terms of actually creating a position of being able to be self-governed? And so the Minister of Information is building within the community to make it to make that awareness come to light.
All right. Now next is our Minister of Culture.
To me, this goes into our mechanism, what we call our life core mechanism. As a people, if we don't have identity, then all we're going to end up doing is emulating the ways and the concepts of our oppressor. We have to know what it means to be in culture. We have to know what it means to be self-sufficient and how to operate as an African-centered community. What makes me African? What makes me different than my oppressor? And you know, we got a lot of videos that build on that, and I think that's best suited for our Minister of Information, Brother E, to dive in on, because he always hits us with culture. As we talk about building a chapter, as we talk about determining what self-determination is, what freedom is, what revolutionary concepts are, if we don't have a stance of root culture when we do this, then we are no different than, we can be no different than our oppressor. We don't know where to go, how to go get there, and everything that goes into that. And so it's super important that before we jump into a status of operation as a people, we have to know where we're headed. We can't know where we're headed if we don't know where our past is and we don't know what we've been. So when you deal with repair, the Minister of Culture is the person that is going to make sure that we're on that right path. Brother, I'll let you break that down even further.
So that right there, Sight, you said when you said how am I, the MOI not going to be qualified to speak about it, about the position of MOI, and that's it right there. It didn't dawn on me until because at some point back in the day, I was MOI, I guess in part maybe because there was no Minister of Culture. So having come from that background, the college dude, study groups and all of that type of stuff, having jumped on that path, I just equated information with culture. So they're one and the same to me. So it's still a jump for me to step back and look at it from just the information, label and whatnot, because the only thing that I can rattle off is culture. That's the information. That's what it is that needs to be injected in everything that it is we have a conversation about, is our context, our cultural context, where we are, as opposed to where we were, what it is we want to get, all of these definitions that we don't have, to give us a direction, to help shape the tactics and the tools and the resources that we utilize, and the identifying of resources and whatnot. So yeah, that difference between culture and information, just blurred with me, and it's always just been that if self-determination, again, I think I said it earlier, is what it is we're striving for, then our picture of what self-determination is can only be found in one place, and that's within us, within our communities, where we were at whatever time, and understanding that process. And I think that whole understanding of that position of culture and information, and the positions and all of that are part of that process. The actual learning is a part of the process. And I think that's probably the most important aspect of the Minister of Culture, is, or the Ministry of Culture, or whatever, is that being flexible and evolutionary minded, so that it can constantly grow, because that's the nature of the party. It's supposed to be, as far as our movements in this world, is to be the loosely, the guerrilla mindset. And those are the things that are going to give us to adaptation and whatnot. I keep seeing folks, we're so stuck in the isms and the ideas that, we think that Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism are opposed to one another, that they don't coexist, because we're stuck in those spots. But a part of the idea of culture is being able to flow, to fit the surroundings, and understand that it's the process, the bigger picture, not the individual parts. Those are what you use to understand the bigger picture. And that has to be the heart and the drive and the mind of the party, is that same thing that you would do as a guerrilla in the field, waging battle. You have to be able to do mentally first, before you can acquiesce to that, to be effective at it. And so for us, that looked like our lives before we messed with these folks. We adapted to the world around us, instead of trying to destroy and bring it under our foot, to make it heal to us. So yeah, that's why it kind of still throws me off, I guess, and I say that I'm not qualified, because it's still that, that growth and understanding of what it is. I told my oldest daughter, I was on the phone with her, and I had promised her when she was little, 5, 6 years old, I was going to make a school for her. And that was something I told her over the years. I'm going to build you a school, make you a school. And so I talked to her last night. I was like, my bad. I slipped up on the school. I didn't, get it made and whatnot. But in her mind, it was all school. It was all learning, being part of the party, the buttons, and the going to the woods, and the shooting range, and all of those types of things was a school. It's, that whole process was a school. So yeah, we have to embrace that the process is what it is we're trying to be a part of, not our own individual, I want this, I want that, but that connection, and that oneness, that it is we're supposed to be pursuing. Yeah.
When I look at the Minister of Information and the Minister of Culture, and even the Director of Panther Education, when I look at all these, originally I've always looked at all of these sections as going under the Minister of Information. And this is just giving you my visualization of this, just building on it a little bit. I look at the ministers on the Central Committee kind of as generals. Basically, they all lead a platoon. That platoon is that particular mechanism that they've been put over. And then you'll have ranking and file officers. You have ranking officers and rank and file officers that'll go under those ranking officers inside of that mechanism, particularly that assists the party in accomplishing its goal of liberating the community. So I'd always seen all of that under that minister information. Later, I started revisualizing that. Part of when I was on my hiatus state, I was revisualizing that, and I started seeing the minister of information as more. It would be kind of like the counterpart to the United States director of the CIA or the United States director of the FBI. I started seeing the minister of information more like that, and the minister of education more like in the position that we had Brother E in. Because at the time, the minister of information, the ideal of newsletter, newspaper, anything that we utilize to communicate and educate the community, educate the people, the political education classes, in which we end up turning into political cultural education classes, because we understood the importance of not just having a political science mind, but also going back to having that cultural foundation in which any true revolutionary party should be built on. But that's just an idea to think on, just showing how I visualize and see these different positions in these offices. Brother Ward, did you want to jump back on that minister of culture before we move to the
Yeah.
next?
Yeah, and actually, I want to bring up something because of, and see, this is not something that we are going to necessarily do here right now within the Panther 48, but there are different ways and layers to how to take in the different aspects of the positions. For instance, information, culture, and education form a trifactor in terms of the operations of the organization. Whereas information is your ability to be able to interpret data, the world around you, and process it. Culture is the actual practice of what it means to be self-sufficient. If you're not able to determine and know what self-sufficiency is, what freedom is, what these various definitions is, then that you don't know what to do with the data. So the information component is being able to interpret all of your sensory inputs. Whereas culture goes into, now that I'm able to do this, I have to put it into practice. And then the education or director of Panther Education goes into having the cognitive abilities as an internal component of membership to be able to know how to process information, and then from there be able to put it into practice, which is the culture. So from that component, the ultimate goal of being able to be practicing our self-determination is through culture. We have to operate through culture. But if you don't know what information is, if you don't know how to interpret information, if you don't know how to deal with the various data, what's misinformation and what is practical information, what is useful information, what is advancement information, what is revolutionary and what is visionary, then you're not going to go anywhere. Again, at that point, if you don't know thyself, all you're going to do is emulate that of your enemy. And so that's the whole aspect of that. And then again, direct education, which is what I'm talking about now, is the person in the department that is able to facilitate all of the educational needs of the internal component of the organization, so that the Panther can operate on the best version of what it means to get things moving and operating through what we call a Panther way of life, for the sake of the organization doing the best it can do through all of the different members. So there's a internal component of education, and we call it the director of Panther Education. So the information part, again, you have an internal and an external. How do you teach the community to raise its consciousness? And as membership, how are you able to process the various different things that we need to be able to do so that we can practice self-determination through our culture? So information, culture, and education, that trifactor operates on that level.
Yo, look here. Y'all keep saying a whole lot of shit. It's too early in the morning to me be trying to process all this information like this. But in my head, what you said boils down to, was a person's minister of information is the putting data in formation, making it make sense. It's the understanding. The culture is the practicing, the understanding of that which you put in formation. And then education, in my head, becomes the overstanding, whereas now you've lived it, you've informed it, you've practiced it. Now there should be enough of an understanding to overstand the movement or the broadcasting, the sharing of that information to others, to educate, whether it's, you know, your next door neighbor or a child that comes after, to project that and give that as information to someone else, so that they can start the cycle all over again, getting information, practicing it, being able to broadcast to the next. And so for me, that's the trifecta. That's what it is. That's what culture is. You need to make a diagram of that. I can make a nice picture out of that right there.
Yeah.
You had to give me a sound bite for some shit for that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because that's the whole thing in terms of what was done when I expounded on the mechanisms, because from that same standpoint, the information becomes the infrastructure, and the culture becomes the architecture, and the education becomes the institution. And the institution is what gives you foundational generational advancement, which again is that same trifactor restarting all over again. And that's why we refer to all of that as operating through what we call Panther continuity. So you're absolutely right. But again, that's going into a deeper level of what's actually being said beyond just the words on the page.
Oh, right. You see what he did there, Syke? That was a good one. Yeah. War got it right there. I like that one, boy. That's going to be a show by itself right there.
All right. Black Panther Party Director of Academic Education.
Think of the Director of Academic Education is just teaching your basic academic skills so that a person is equipped with what they need to be able to just process, education, process how to be studious, how to read, how to study. So we realize that our people have, especially through the public school system, have taken academics for granted. And so just for somebody to be able to come in and deal with the high level of things that will be discussed through information, and to be able to see that I should be in a position of practicing self-determination through my culture and not be overwhelmed, we have to take things back to the basics. So we have to oftentimes deal with a person's academic abilities so that they can be brought up to speed to be able to process the rest of everything. And that was something that really came upon very early on within the development of again, having a mini community government, so to speak, within the Panther Party, is that a lot of our people suffered through lack of proper academics, because they looked at, they rebelled school. Again, even with just your basic public school education, if I don't have a place to where this fits into my life properly, and I will take advantage, I will take for granted academics. If the only time I'm going to read is if there's dollars attached to it, then that's going to remove me completely from the realm of how I'm being governed through my own enslavement. So academics is important so that I can be in the right framework to be able to process everything else that's going on. So we realize that we have to take a step back and provide people a blueprint and a foundation from an academic standpoint so that they can ingest everything else. So it goes into that whole diet thing that we talked about.
All right. You have something you want to go on the behind that? All right. Minister of Intelligence Operations.
I'm not going to say a whole lot about this, but just think of it like this. Even going back to when I talked about the counterintelligence, the deal is every governing body must have an intelligence division, the department, to deal with all aspects of espionage and how we are being weaponized against ourselves and what is being weaponized against us as a people. So our intelligence operations is going to kind of deal with that part.
All right. Director of Community Programs.
We have to serve the people. We have to have operations and programs that are going to align with us practicing self-determination, practicing empowerment. And so the director of community programs is just going to be the person that deals with these component programs that what we call survival, pending revolution, or survival going into decolonization programs. So our people have to practice doing for self. Our people have to practice serving one another and serving each other. And this is one of the main thing that most people associate the Black Panther Party with is with our community programs. But the idea behind the community programs is really just getting us back to a place to where we are taking care of one another. We are operating for ourselves, by ourselves, to ourselves. And so the director of community programs is just a person that oversees how each of these programs come together.
Minister of Commerce and Industry.
Minister of Commerce and Industry goes into taking things a step further from the standpoint of building upon production, building upon us having a foundation of being in control of our natural resources, in control of our resources, and of our building as a way of life. And so we have to deal with commerce and industry and exchange and developing of our apparatus. That's all I'm saying on that one.
We're giving E some time if he wanted to come in. Okay, Minister of Communications.
Minister of Communications just goes into the flow of the various departments in terms of how they communicate, how they coordinate with one another. So the Minister of Communications works closely with the Minister of Logistics to make sure that we're able to keep things in motion and the flow going properly.
Field Marshal.
Field Marshal is one of my favorite ones because when we talk about bringing people in from the community into the Panther organization to be a part of practicing self-determination, it is that Field Marshal that is building up the person to be able to operate within the ranks of a Panther. Our Field Marshal really deals with the entire bringing in a recruit process. And then they also obviously operate under the defense mechanism and as well as help to see to it that from the internal security aspect, you have those soldiers that are able to implement whatever stages of development that's necessary and whatever stages of security that's necessary, whether it would be internal or external. So the Field Marshal is a person that's just really putting boots to the ground operations together as it applies to the troop movement and the people movement of the organization.
Field Medic.
Field Medic is someone that is out in the field dealing with the health assessment of the community and reinforcing the aspects of the ministry or the Ministry of Health department in regards to the trifecta of our physical, mental, and spiritual or psychological health within the community. But this is just someone, and mind you, when we talk about field medic, this is really a plural thing. When we talk about medic, scholar, or chancellor, then we're dealing with aspects to where these are the tentacles or the wings of that specific component or body. So field medic goes in and aids in these areas, extending our ability to reach the community.
Okay, Field Scholar.
Field Scholar is a person that's dropping the science and the knowledge on a we like to say a poor righteous teacher level to the community. Oftentimes, for instance, people would think of like what Malcolm would do with the Nation of Islam, where he would stand on a street corner or a minister of mosque or stand on a street corner and drop knowledge to the people. This is what a field scholar is doing. A field scholar is connecting the people and meeting the people where they at, as opposed to someone that is saying where you come to the Panther headquarters to hear your PEs or whatever. The field scholar is just dropping knowledge anywhere and everywhere and bringing the word to the community to raise the conscience of the people wherever they at. So they're the person that's kind of going out in the field and doing that.
Field commander.
Field commander is operating under the, we refer typically in dealing with intelligence gathering and dealing with helping the field marshal and the minister of defense pull together all of the various components of making sure a field operation goes together and works. So we usually refer to that as the trifecta of how you bring about data, information, and knowledge coming together through the internal and external flow of our operations in the field.
Okay, Black Panther Party Field Chancellor.
That one is easily said by the way we have it worded here, responsible for the people's engagement in bridging the B.P.P with the community, and shows through observation and participation that the people can hold the power to determine their destiny. So kind of like the same principle behind a field scholar, a field chancellor is kind of like your mentor. Think of a field chancellor as kind of like a mentor to the people, someone that ushers in and even works through some elements of community liaison, ushers in the people and be able to help bridge that gap of awareness that goes on between the actual Panther and the average person in the street.
Okay, Black Panther Party Field Secretary.
Field secretary is kind of like the same thing as the internal secretary, but this is someone that's handling some of the works of helping to coordinate actual things that's happening in the field through whatever different programs that we may have. But somebody that's operating in the field with our tactical component to put things in motion. So we do separate that from the Panther internal secretary, or we call the B.P.P secretary, because that has to do with our internal operations, whereas a field secretary, you need someone that's on the ground that's helping to facilitate and pull things together properly within different programs that we have going on in the field, operations we got going on in the field.
Okay, field project manager.
I love this one because this one really applies to the background that I started from. One of the things that I think we're missing the mark on a lot of times just in community organizing period is recognizing that everything needs to operate through project management. And project management is going to make sure that things have a proper beginning, a proper process to see to it that the work gets done and that it gets closed out and gets put to use in the field. And so what we have with that, we recognize that there needs to be a project manager, somebody that's going to be overall accountable for making sure whatever's going on in the field, whatever that operation is, has a working model of start to finish. And too often what we do in the community period is that we don't approach things through the visionary component of making sure that there is an end game. This is why the protest culture has taken over so strong. It's because people get out, they vent, they emotionalize, they say, hey, this is a problem, something must be done, but there's no process to see to okay, problem solution. There's no way of going about making sure our demands get met and that we actually have some demands that we're projecting and promoting. So it's like, how do you engage the people with our 10-point platform? How do you engage the people to recognize that we have to build ourselves up to a position of empowerment? So the project manager is able to go in and deal with putting these specific components into action in the community and see to it that we have a way to not just have a vision, but we have a way to carry out and conduct the vision and make it become something that is materialized.
Field economist.
I think you can speak on this one. That's something you love. But when we talk about the economy, we basically talk about the economic engine of producing and making sure that our resources are able to be put in motion in the field. So we break it down, and we have to have things broken down within the field and the internal. So that's one thing to note, is that now we're talking about field operations. So how do you actually go out and extract and utilize the resources within the community and make sure that that's able to be brought back to the community? Because keep in mind, when we talk about the Black community in general, as it applies to us, our ability to utilize our resources, remember the dollar leaves the Black community and oftentimes never even enters into the Black community in our current model. So the field economist is able to make sure that there is a process and a flow of how economy is actually utilized within our engine, within our body, within our system, within our mechanisms, so that we are maximizing our full capacity of our resources.
So within, and correct me if I'm hearing this incorrectly, so within the party, within any real functional organization, that organization should have an economy. There should be a flowing economy inside of the organization.
Right. That's your blood. That's your circulation.
True indeed. True indeed. And I think that's one of the ways that organizations weaken themselves. Matter of fact, I don't even think you can call yourself an organization truly if you don't have you need the workers, you need the people inside the organization. 2, you need an economy, like you just said, that's your lifeblood inside of the organization. And 3, you need an educational process inside of the organization to teach the people how to fulfill the needs and the goals of the organization. If you don't have those 3 things, you're not an organization. You're just a group of people hanging out together, saying that you want to get something accomplished. Okay, and so last but not least, we have the Black Panther Party youth minister.
And basically, think of the youth minister as helping to develop the Panther Cubs. And I like to even refer back to Fred Hampton Jr. right now, because Fred Hampton Jr. on this note this is really where he focuses his foundation on recognizing that we have to have the youth able to be brought into the Panther awareness and culture, so that we have continuity. So the youth minister is someone that's going to help guide the youth into the proper upbringing of seeing Panther, what we call the Panther way of life, as something that's ingrained in them as they become an adult, so that it is not trying to relearn all of the ideology, or relearn this, or discover this after you've grown and after you've been victimized and after you've been dealt a hand of oppression first hand, to the point to where, you know what, now I want to take action, now I want to be involved, now I'm willing to engage and make the community better. So our youth minister is going into the component of what made the Panther the greatest threat, is when we start politicizing the youth and getting the youth already coordinated to be in a right mind frame, to be world leaders, to be leaders of our people as Panthers and as self-determinists.
All right. And I believe that that's the last one.
Yep.
I have a quick question that I would like to ask. So we saw all these different positions. And when we look at these positions, and a lot of this has been extended based on the need that the community has, are we looking at these positions and are we saying that each and every one of these positions are members of the Central Committee, or these positions to some degree go under members of the Central Committee? Like we look at a field marshal who's essentially operating from a, for lack of a better term, military point of view. Would that person be under the Minister of Defense, or is that position standalone? Or even when we look at the field economist, is it under the Minister of Finance and Resources, or does this position stand alone? Can you give, because I'm pretty sure people are listening to this, reading this, and thinking through this, and have these questions. Can you give a breakdown and a build on that?
No, those are not at all of those positions are Central Committee. When we think of Central Committee, we talk about the key components or positions that have to do with the actual running of the organization in terms of making authority decision makings about what our vision is and how it would be carried out, and the final authority on the movement of the organization. So no, by no means all of those Central Committee positions at all. But
so go ahead, brother. My bad.
But what they are is functional components of what it takes to make a full Panther body. But think of it like this. Just think of the human body as an organism. The brain and the heart will be the central committee, right? But at the same time, if your liver or kidney gives out, the entire framework or the entire body can fall. So there's key components and key things that make a functional. That's why we have to say the word functional Panther formation. But the actual central committee is what's guiding the internal operations of the organization and making those key decisions.
So central committee is management of the organization, and these other posts that we just discussed are leadership of the organization, things that help these mechanics move. You know, when we first developed the mechanism structure, one of the ideals was looking at the organization as a machine. And so the mechanism structure was kind of like visualizing cogs that moved together and allowed this machine to move, allowed the machine that we call the Panther chapter to walk, to move, to fly, to run. Those mechanisms did that, and these different posts was essentially all to the mechanism. They was things that kept the moving parts greased and operating, energized. You know that, and that's just my metaphor on it. We're gonna get ready to bring it to a close. E, do you have anything that you want to add on or build before we get ready to bring this thing to a close?
No, sir, I'm good.
All right. War, you got anything else you want to add on before we bring it to a close?
Other than what you said about the mechanisms, just know that is alive and well, and that is the what I call the foundational generational advancement or continuity of the whole thing. Is everything falls within a mechanism structure, because we are a body, we are an organ, and when you talk about self-governance, that's what it is. So everything has to have a place. Every organ within the body has to have a purpose, and so that's what we're recognizing and we're bringing to light through elements of leadership, no matter what they are.
True indeed. And so what we're doing is we've developed a full-on class in the structure, the foundation, the education of a Panther chapter. So we started with the Commission of Liberation and the chairman. We've developed the central committee for you. And next we're going to get into some of what that means when the brother just talked about it being a living organization, that mechanism structure. We're going to build on that just a little bit. If you're watching and you're interested in becoming a member of a chapter, if you're already a part of a formation and you need more organization, don't hesitate to leave a comment. You can leave a comment in the comment section. You can reach out to us through an email, and the Panther 48 doesn't mind sitting with you, building with you, and going over these concepts in quote unquote private, to discuss and build on this on a deeper level to help you in the development of your chapter or the development of your formation. But other than that, unless the brothers have anything else, this was your Panther 48. Hopefully you learned something from it. Subscribe to the channel if you want to keep getting these type of jewels, and pass on and share this with as many of your brothers and sisters that you think needs this information. With that, we leave you how we came. Peace and power.